Right, we go to a record shop in East London now, where they still sell records by the looks of the display behind. But I'm not sure that many of those records are for sale. We welcome to 98 Not Out, Mr. John Altman. John, how are you, sir?
Hi there. Yeah, all good, thanks.
I'm being a bit cheeky. It's not a record shop at all. It's a fantastic display of achievements from your career in the music industry that's adorning your wall behind.
Yes. It's very nice, actually. I mean, it's, a few of them took quite a while to come, like 30 odd years, but I got them in the end.
Could you, just for the listeners who don't know, just give us a few examples of some of the records that you've won accolades for?
Well, Alison Moyes, That Old Devil Called Love, Alan Jones, Walking in the Air, Simple Minds, Street Fighting Years album, Prefab Sprout, Langley Park to Memphis, Diana Ross, Christmas album, Tina Turner and Barry White, Wildest Dreams, George Michael, Faith, Monty Python's Life of Brian, The Ruttles, Bjork, It's So So Quiet, Titanic the movie, and a diamond disc for George Michael is on its way. 10 million sales in America.
Wow, a diamond! I've never heard of a diamond disc before.
Well, I hadn't before I found I could have one. Apparently, they're those, they have like 10 albums in a display, and I said, I haven't got any room for that. So they're going to just put one, with a little plaque. So that's good.
I suppose while we're talking about George Michael, we should just note the sad news this week of the passing of Dion Estes, the bass player for Wham and for George Michael, a friend of yours as well, I gather.
Yeah. I think I last saw him at the Spandau Ballet reunion concert in Los Angeles, which would be about 5-6 years ago now. But very tragic lot. And also a great arranger, John Ashton Thomas, who was Diana Ross's musical director and worked a lot for Hans Zimmer. And they both went this week, sadly. So they're dropping quite quickly at the moment. Very unfortunate.
Very, very sad. Now, you mentioned Hans Zimmer there, very famous for scoring movie soundtracks. And you yourself are no stranger to movies. And I gather that you are or have some involvement in the new James Bond film, No Time to Die. Do you want to tell us about that?
Yes, I actually got a call from Hans saying this is way beneath your capabilities or standard or whatever you want to call it. But we want to do some James Bond. We're doing No Time to Die, which I knew. And we want to put some of the brass that's associated with the Bond films into the film. There isn't, the cues we've written don't really have that. So I arranged like the gun barrel at the beginning, the Cuba chase that goes on the fight there, and the big motorcycle chase at the beginning of the film. And then when I was in studio recording, Hans popped in. He was in the big studio next door and said, would you mind conducting all the brass for the whole movie? Because we want the separation from the room so we can mess about with it in the mix. So I wound up taking charge of all the brass for the film. And of course, being the last thing before lockdown, promptly forgot all about it for a year and a half. Suddenly the film's out and everyone wants to talk about it. So I'm sort of digging into my memory bank. But I was delighted to have been asked because I did the tank chase in GoldenEye 20-something years earlier.
Yeah.
And in fact, Lorne
with
Bell,
about a week, with about a week's notice, wasn't it? If that.
A day's notice. Yeah. I wish I'd had.
Was it over a weekend you did the whole thing? Is that the story?
The whole thing over the weekend is absolutely true.
That was Pierce Brosnan's first Bond film, and they were kind of reinventing things. And I gather from what I've just sort of dug around with this that they weren't over enthused with Eric Serra's synth-heavy soundtrack at the time.
Yeah, no, that's true. I worked a lot with Eric as his arranger and conductor, and we did a film, very good film called Leon, with Gary Oldman and Jean Reno, and
Brilliant
they loved
film.
the Bond producers loved it, and they said, we want that for Bond. We want to reinvent him, and that's the sound we want. When we got going on the film, it became very apparent that that really wasn't the sound they wanted, and they sort of panicked and thought, well, we've got a new James Bond. Will the public accept him, and will they accept a new angle for the music? So they wanted to veer back more towards the traditional James Bond soundtracks, which is why they asked me to take over at that point. But obviously, because Eric had been hired as a composer, I was a bit, well, you know, you've got to phone him and okay it with him, otherwise I won't do it, you know, because my loyalty is to him, really. And Martin Campbell, the director, rang him, and he said, yeah, tell John to go ahead. So that was it. I went ahead.
Oh, fantastic. It does seem a long time ago now. I remember going to see that, and yeah, now you mention it, it's
27 years, yeah.
Unbelievable.
And do you get sight of the scenes that you're working to? You do.
Yeah,
okay.
we had the film running, so I could snatch a look. But obviously, I'm more concerned that, you know, one of the French horns doesn't split a note, or, you know, the entry is right. So my real focus is on how the music sounds. Now, at the corner of my eye, I can see the picture, and I can go, oh, that looks good. Oh, that's clever, you know, but you're not really taking in the whole thing until you see the film in the cinema, I guess.
No, it's not. It's not like reverse choreography where you're putting the music to the movement. It's just get the notes right, get the pauses right.
Well, it is, because it's written to. I mean, when I was writing it, I had all the visuals at my disposal. But again, you're matching. You know, you haven't got sound effects. You haven't got all the final dub. So you're looking at a bunch of, well, you know, really, really good stunt pictures. But again, your main concern is putting the brass stabs in, and, you know, doing the little flourishes that everyone goes, oh, that's James Bond. So you're half focused on it. I wouldn't say you're totally ignoring it, but you're not 100% looking and going, oh, that looks really good. Oh, I forgot to write anything. I was so taken up with the scene.
From what you're saying, I mean, are there certain structures you've got to stick to when you're scoring a Bond film, that you need to keep referencing the Bond theme, or little references that people are going to pick up on?
Yeah, it's a mixture of referencing the Bond theme, where Monty Norman, who wrote the Bond theme, who actually used to sing in my jazz quartet, you know, was my vocalist. There is a contractual obligation to use a certain amount of the James Bond theme in the film. So we're all mindful of that. And we're also mindful of the flourishes that John Barry put in, you know, slightly jazzy brass, that in a lot of cases, it's very difficult to fit into what Hans does, because Hans does his own thing. But I think we managed it. I think the soundtrack sounds great.
There was a good album in the mid-90s. David, I can't remember, the name escapes me, but they reimagined...
David Arnold.
That's it, where they reimagined a lot of the themes with contemporary musicians and bands. I think that seemed to work quite well, but clearly you had to stick to the rules.
Yeah, well, there's a distinction, of course, between the title songs that, like, for example, this one Billie Eilish did, you know, and the title songs are always totally separate from the score. You may reference them in the score. I think Hans did in a couple of cases, but they are separate entities. You know, you have a song and then you have whatever happens in the film. sometimes they mix, like Goldfinger, you know, the brass flourish from that. You try and use it somewhere, you know, along the way. Not necessarily that flourish, but that idea of how the brass is treated.
Well, even the final note of the Billie Eilish song, I think, is probably a reference back. I can't really place it, but it seems very Bond. Yeah, that
guitar chord, yeah, that goes with Bond. There are certain things that immediately tell you it's James Bond. You know, it's pretty easy to throw them in. You know.
Well, congratulations on your involvement with that again. But regular listeners to this show and people that have come across your path down the years will know that you are an avid cricket enthusiast, and probably as knee deep in cricket as you are in music. With the Ashes galloping towards us on a three-legged donkey, it just made me think of John Altman and Australia and the Ashes. And one of the stories that keeps coming up is the time that you were appointed the Australian Social Secretary. So what was that all about?
Well, it was interesting. I mean, I through Essex, obviously, originally, I got to know Mark Moore and Alan Border when they played at Essex. And I never took a holiday in the 80s. I was just working, which, you know, there is a point to telling this, that in 1990, I suddenly decided, you know, the family were getting bigger, and I thought, you know, I've got a good idea. Let's go to the Caribbean and watch cricket, and they can sit on the beach, which I don't exactly enjoy. And I'll go to cricket with my cricket mad son. You know, one of my sons loved going, and we'll hang out. And I messaged one of the Australian team. I can't actually remember who. It might have been Mark Moore, and just said, do you have any idea where you're staying while you're there? And they came back with an itinerary. So I booked into the same hotels. And in Barbados, we were all at what was then the Rockley Resort, which was cabins around swimming pool. And our cabin was next to all the Australian players. So if you wanted to use the pool or the you know, the lounge area or the breakfast area, you would be with the team. So the ones I knew introduced me to the ones I didn't know. And pretty soon I was gigging because Billy Ocean was in Barbados, Eddie Grant was there. Vic Linton, who used to play guitar with Billy Ocean, lives there. So I hooked up with all those people, and I would go and, you know, sit in with them. And I took Craig McDermott to Eddie Grant's studio. You know, it was fun. We all hung out. So each night after the game, sorry, I am getting ahead of myself because the first time I went was England, and I really was, well, I wasn't uncomfortable, but I mean, there were too many English people for my liking. It was, you know, you couldn't go anywhere without the it wasn't the Barmy Army then, but it was the British holidaymakers, you know. So the following year I went to Australia, West Indies, and the Australian public hadn't discovered the Caribbean as a place to go. So I was literally the only, inverted commas, fan of the Australian team. So they would give it, you know, they'd each give me 3 complimentary tickets. So I had this wodge, you know, Barbados and Antigua, you know, so 60 tickets where I could go, and they came to my gigs. So we became friendly, and when they came over in '93, I went down to Arundel where they started the tour, and Ian Healy spotted me through the window and said, "Oh, come in the dressing room, come in the dressing room." And I have a apartment in Brighton, so they said, "Oh, we're in Brighton tonight. Is there anything going on?" And I said, "Well, I've got a place down there. That's where I'm staying." They said, "Right, you're taking us out. You're going to show us what to do." And from then on, I I sort of organised them, you know, and I travelled on the bus and took them to parties and took them to gigs, and that really continued till about 2013, because as new players came in, the older ones would introduce me and say, "Oh, he's got to, you know, he's going to take us out." So really, I think Shane Watson and Brett Lee, being musicians, were the last two actual members of the team that I knew. But then all the people I knew from my days following the game were in the backroom staff, like Justin Langer and Darren Lehman and Divenuto, and all those people were sort of auxiliary staff. So it sort of shifted. And I mean, my cricket sort of friendships, you know, which when I was a younger guy would be with the players. I mean, 20-year-old players aren't really going to be interested in this old geezer. So, so that part of my life has gone, really. But we did have some funny moments. You know, we were the day Australia won the Ashes in '93. We all went down to Stringfellows, and they'd already thrown a couple of the players out. Obvious alcoholic reasons. And I got there with, I think, Alan Border and Mark Waugh and a couple of others, and they wouldn't let us in. If you can imagine being banned from Stringfellows, you've got to be pretty sort of...
I guess COVID notwithstanding, that kind of any team that would come over and tour in London or wherever, or even in the West Indies, you don't have those freedoms anymore, do you?
No, it's completely changed. It's completely changed. And in fact, the last time I went to see the Australian tourists play at Sussex, they came back to the hotel, which is basically next door where I live. And they got off the coach and they literally all had their heads looking at the floor and sort of scurried into the hotel. And that was the last you saw of them. Yeah. But I was able to go back later in the evening and sort of, you know, have a drink with Darren Lehman, who at the time was the coach, you know, because we'd been pals. So that was easy, but it changed completely. And then, of course, they arranged a tour of Los Angeles, a tour. It was 5 games, Australia A v India A. And I thought they'd put it on for me because I was the only spectator. Literally, the only spectator. But it was a TV thing, so all the commentators were there. So actually, I hired at the time a convertible, whatever it was, BMW or something. And I took Barry Richards and Adam Gilchrist round Hollywood, you know, round Beverly Hills and Bel Air and the canyons. And they've never forgotten that. You know, they always bring that up when they see me. You know, oh, you drove us through Laurel Canyon.
Are there any of your Hollywood contacts cricket fans out there? Any? Yeah,
I mean, apart from the obvious sort of Brits and Australians who are in LA, and a very surprising one. I did a gig for about 10 years with a guy called Conrad Janis, and Conrad was Mindy's dad in Mork and Mindy, if you remember that TV series. And he's been in loads of Hollywood films. And I had a visitor at the gig from London, and they'd been watching the World Cup or, you know, something crickety. And he said to me, oh, you know, the result of the cricket yesterday was blah, 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 blah. And Conrad Janis, walking by, said, are you talking about Don Bradman? I sort of jumped back and said, no, we're talking about modern cricket. He's an American New Yorker. And he said, that Michael Bevan is a hell of a one-day player, isn't he? And I looked at him and I thought, how do you know about cricket? He said, I'm a baseball fan. I have cricket on satellite. I love it. And he said, when I was doing a play in London in 1958, I got taken to England, New Zealand at Lord's. And I said, well, that's amazing because that's the first test match I ever went to. He then proceeded to recite both teams in their entirety. including the New Zealand team, which nobody, John Reed and Alabaster and names that nobody would know ever again. I think, New Zealand then would be all out for 40 because they could barely play. It's changed completely now.
Yeah.
But he rattled off the names of both teams from 1958. Extraordinary.
Incredible.
Yeah.
And what are you up to? I mean, I know you're very involved with the Lord's Tavern. I see you quite a lot when we go to the various functions. Obviously, that's taking a bit of a downturn, whatever else. But what are you up to at the moment with things unwinding?
Well, I used lockdown to write my memoirs, which was great fun, and they come out in February. There's not much about cricket in them because they said save it for another book because I think they're thinking of selling it, in the States and places like that where cricket doesn't mean much to anyone. So I've only really got one cricket story in the book, which was a Bunbury game we played against Norma Major's team with John Major umpiring. Brian Close was captaining Norma Major's team, bless him. And the opening bowler was Richard Snell, the South African Test player. And our opening batsmen were Chris Broad and Bill Wyman. And Brian Close said to Richard Snell, right, one of these guys is an ex-England Test cricketer and the other one's a member of the Rolling Stones. So Richard, being South African, had no idea who the Rolling Stones were, saw Chris Broad with his sort of long hair and thought, he's a Rolling Stone, and he bowled him gentle lobs. when Bill got up the other end, it was bouncers and 90 miles an hour. Bill was standing there, oi, what are you doing? Somebody had to run over and tell him, you got them the wrong way round.
All the Rolling Stones are cricket fans, aren't they?
They are. Well, funnily enough, that the only place I ever really saw Mick Jagger or Charlie Watts was at the cricket. I sat with Charlie at Lord's again, it's a very sad loss.
Yeah.
The only memorabilia he had on display in his house was Don Bradman's tour jacket. No Rolling Stones things at all. He paid like, I don't know, 30 grand or something to have the tour jacket. He was really proud of it.
Oh, amazing.
But they were cricket fanatics. Bill was the only one who really played. And Bill actually took a hat trick at the Oval, which was televised. So until someone did it recently, was it Moeen Ali? I can't remember.
Yeah, against South Africa.
Yeah.
Bill was
to win the game.
Bill was the only televised hat trick from the Oval.
So I don't. Well, it's tricky, this Ashes tour coming up, because obviously it's not going to be the same without the Barmy Army, and I hope it goes ahead. It seems to be looking more and more likely, but it won't be the same, will it? Even if it does go ahead.
No, it won't be the same. I'm not sure about. Well, I hope I'm proved wrong, but some of the selections, I think Saqib should be there. We haven't got any really quick bowlers. I can't understand why they didn't put Livingston in. We'll see. We'll see. I mean, there's no one who can really take the game to the Aussies, as far as I can see, apart from Root. And for 11 people to rely on, maybe Butler coming good or maybe Bairstow coming good, I don't know. I mean, I think their bowling attack is too strong for to give us leeway to crack on. But I may be wrong. The great thing about cricket is quite often you're very wrong.
It feels like a very safe selection, doesn't it?
It does. It's sort of okay. Well, he did well in the summer, so we'll give him a go. He was almost okay, so we'll give him a try. It just doesn't seem adventurous in any way, and especially without Archer and without Ben Stokes.
Yeah, but always there's a fine tradition of Down Under Ashes being good platforms for English sort of debutantes, if you like. I'm sort of thinking of Alex Tudor and
Yeah.
You know, but people like that have gone down there and performed and have kind of wrong-footed the Aussies a bit.
Yeah, you hope that somebody will sort of seize the gauntlet and actually, oh, you know, I can play like Michael Vaughan did that time, you know, where or Alistair, you know, sort of Chris Broad even going back, you know,
Yeah,
suddenly looked invincible, you know. It's interesting. It should bring out the best in people, and you hope it will, you know. But equally, you dread a sort of 5-0.
there have been quite a few of those in recent years as well.
Well, yeah, I had the great joy of traveling with what they used to call the Dominators, where, you know, they would never really lose anything. It was sort of just win every single game, you know.
Before we go, I'm going to ask you, I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit. So more and more these days, you find cricketers, and you've mentioned a couple already, that can sing a song or play a tune. Now, from your putting your musical hat on for the moment, who do you think has been the most talented cricketing musician that you've come across down the years?
I would honestly say Mark Butcher, really, because Mark could, you know, you take away any of the cricket side of it, and what he did and does as a singer and guitarist completely stands up. You know, some of the people like, you know, like maybe Brett Lee, if they had dedicated themselves more to music, they would have been pretty damn good. Brett Lee's one of Brett Lee's brothers, not Shane, but the other brother, is a very fine piano player. So they've all got it in them to shine in that respect. But Mark sort of stood out really, and also a guy who you may not know who played mainly minor county cricket, a chap called Orlando LaFleming, who is a wonderful jazz double bass player. I mean, literally world class. He lives in New York now. And he played for, I think, Wiltshire. He may have played for Somerset. I'm off the top of my head. You can't quote me on that. But he's a fantastic musician. And of course, Don Bradman was a very good pianist. There were recordings of him playing, you know, pretty competent. And there was also Frank Parr, who was wicketkeeper for Lancashire, who was a very good trombone player in sort of on the Dixieland scene, you know. But I wouldn't say he was world class. And then of course you've got, you know, Kurt Lee and Richie Richardson, who are sort of, but I haven't actually heard them, so I can't. How good they are, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
But
Jimmy Anderson does a bit as well, doesn't he?
Jimmy does a bit. Joe Root plays a bit of guitar, apparently. Alistair Cook plays saxophone, but Jason Gillespie used to play saxophone. I've not really. I think most of them should stick to cricket, probably. Trouble the record companies at all, but it's great. I mean, they all love music. That's the great bonding thing, you know. The amazing thing playing wherever I played around the world was I could guarantee all the cricketers showing up. And that was here, that was in Scotland, in Ireland, in LA, in Barbados, in Antigua. And they would all be there, you know, they'd all come along, even after a day's play, which of course wouldn't happen now.
No. Excellent to see you, John. You're looking very well and on good form as always. So many thanks for joining us today. And I should tell you that our next guest following you on the show tonight is a certain M. Butcher.
That's hence the laugh. I had to say it, didn't I? No, I seriously mean it. You know, I mean, the all-star bands we put together, you know, for the PCA for all those 10 years or whatever, however long it was. I mean, you had really serious people playing there. You know, you had the Ray Coopers and your John Etheridge and Henry Spinetti. You know, I mean, lots of top class. Bill Wyman. You know, the top. And Mark was not out of place. You know, and they all they all said so. You know, it was, wow, you know, you sound great. So it wasn't just lip service, you know, because he was the cricket.
Brilliant.
So give him my best.
I will. All right, excellent. Many thanks, John Altman. We could, as always, talk all night, but we'll save a bit for the Lord's Taverners lunch. And if anyone's interested, they should head now to lordstaverners.org, where you can buy tickets and come down, and you can meet John. You can even buy me a drink if you want. But there'll be plenty of good people down there, all raising money for a fantastic cause. The Taverners is a wonderful charity, and the Christmas lunch is always an excellent occasion. So I would urge everyone to try and get yourself down there for a great afternoon, and look forward to seeing it if you can get there. John Altman, many thanks for coming on 98 Not Out. Always a pleasure talking, and we'll catch up very soon.
My pleasure.